Whoa, whoa, calm down, calm down. I know that title was provocative or attention grabbing, I suppose. And clearly, if you've clicked, it worked. But really, what this isn't going to be a racist rant about Indians or immigrants in general. Basically, what I want to talk about is the parallels I see with immigration and modern day immigration into the West in particular. Um, and a historical example. So what we see on the internet at the moment is there's a lot of negativity and somewhat hate, especially towards Indians. The reason why I'm focusing on Indians in this video is because I am from New Zealand. And Indian immigration is somewhat in the zeitgeist at the moment. We're just looking at signing a free trade agreement with India. There's already been a lot of Indian immigration into New Zealand. And with this free trade agreement, that could potentially open the door for a lot more, potentially uncapped. If we had listened to some of the politicians, uncapped immigration from India into New Zealand is a possibility, according to some people, due to this free trade agreement. And I just wanted to talk about that. And there's obviously a lot of negative feelings, somewhat, towards immigrants and Indians in particular, and a lot of that is just thrown away. It's just dismissed as pure racism, and I don't think it is. I don't think it can all be ascribed to racism. I think there is something there that is justified. So I think basically the easiest way for me to explain it, firstly, with these videos I don't script them or anything. This is just straight out of the dome. So I may make mistakes. I may say stuff that could be deemed offensive, and if I do, I apologize. Just let me know in the comments, and we can talk about it. That's okay. I'm not out here trying to be deliberately provocative or to cause offense. I just want to talk about something I've been thinking about, and that is mass immigration in the 21st century. And how that, I think, it is very similar to colonialism. Now, straight away, you're looking at me. Hey, you're a white guy from New Zealand. What do you know all about colonialism, don't you? And I do. And so let's talk about it from the New Zealand lens. Let's look at New Zealand. Back in 1840, a treaty was signed between the British Crown, and over 500 chiefs. Māori chiefs signed this treaty, the Treaty of Waitangi. And what that did is it opened the door for settlers to come from Britain, colonial settlers to come from Britain. And so from 1840 to, I believe it was 1891, 500,000 to 700,000 British settlers came to New Zealand. So at the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi, there was approximately 3,000 British Europeans in New Zealand, and they would have been, some British colonial people, but it was mostly, whalers and missionaries and stuff like that, traders and stuff. Very little, I think, British military and stuff like that. It wasn't until after the signing of the treaty that a lot of them probably turned up more. And so about 3,000 Pākehā or British people in New Zealand at around 1840, and around 100,000 Māori. So there was a lot of, there was a big number discrepancy there. And so the Pākehā that were in New Zealand, they had to work with the Māori because they were the minority. And they had to learn the Māori language because the Māori were the majority. So if you wanted to interact with Māori, you had to learn their ways and speak their language, because you were in the minority. And if you pissed them off, they would have donked you on the head, with their taiha or their patu or their mere, So they were scary, intimidating people. If you're an early settler in New Zealand, it would have been terrifying. I mean, the reason why the South Island in New Zealand was mostly colonized first in larger numbers, I think, why the Scots all went down to and set up Dunedin, because there was less Māori there, and Māori was scary. If you're a 19th century British settler, it would have been terrifying, I think. A lot of these Māori warriors, they're very intimidating, especially with their haka and stuff. But anyway, I'm going off topic. I'm going a bit off topic here. So yeah, at the signing of the treaty, 3,000 Pākehā, 100,000 Māori, right? But then by the time New Zealand, who was the first country to have universal suffrage, and I believe it was around 1891, they say 50 years after the signing of the treaty, you had between 500,000 to 700,000 Pākehā and less than 100,000 Māori, right? Due to disease and stuff like that. So a lot of the diseases the Europeans brought over affected the Māori quite badly, as was the case back in the day. Like, it happened all around, like in Australia and Canada and America, South America. European diseases that cause havoc amongst indigenous communities who had been a lot more separate from the world. So in 1891, with the first universal suffrage election, Māori were pretty much locked out of politics, right? Because they were the minority. I mean, they had their own Māori seats and stuff like that, but they were only a limited number of seats. But for the most part, the Pākehā majority had their say, because democratically, due to their majority numbers, the fact that there was so much more of them. And of course, that caused issues. It wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong. I mean, I do think New Zealand, in less than 200 years, less than 200 years, we went from signing a treaty to having one of the most advanced, greatest countries, richest countries in the world. I think it's a good job, Māori and Pākehā. You did great. So, this isn't necessarily an anti-immigration video. Okay, I just want to talk about some similarities here. Now, why did the British colonize? Why was this so many people so keen to leave their homeland and go live and start countries and societies on the other side of the planet? I think we have to look at the Industrial Revolution. So once the Industrial Revolution happened, like, a lot of people had to move into the city for jobs. So a lot of people left the rural places where they grew up and had a lot of their cultural family supports and stuff, move into the cities, and it became a lot more socially isolated in a way, with the loss of their old family and rural networks. And then, of course, within the Industrial Revolution, you had a lot of machines being created, right? And so the labor was actually being more concentrated. You needed less people. And then on top of that, there's a lot more money going around. So there was money, but less jobs. And then there's also the class system, right? So a lot of the people that moved to New Zealand were working and lower middle class people who by and large were effectively locked in that position within Britain due to the class system. And so by moving to another country on the other side of the planet, like New Zealand, they were able to escape that and set up their own sort of society without that same class-based system. And so New Zealand is quite famous for being very egalitarian, right? In an effort to not fall into the trap of the class system like there was in Britain. Now, what the hell does that got to do with India? Well, let's look at modern day India, 21st century India. India is currently going through industrialization, right? Massive industrialization. A lot of people are having to move in from the rural areas for jobs in cities. Of course, with all that technology growing, jobs are decreasing, and the jobs that are left are somewhat lower. There's a lot lower paid, and obviously a bit different to 19th century. There's a bit more of information technology and stuff like that as well. So it's sort of very similar sort of thing. But then also, what India has, they don't have a class system, but they still have a caste system. And if you're in that caste system, even though it's illegal in India to discriminate based on the caste, let's be honest, we all know it still happens. Same thing happens in Britain with the class system as well. You've got a working class accent, people aren't going to take you as seriously in Britain as if you have like some sort of Eton posh accent, as they would call it. And so that's just the way it is. That's just people. And so you've still got the caste system in Britain, in India, and then you've also got rapid industrialization and advancement of their culture and their society, right? So what happens now? You got all these extra people who might have moved in from a city. They're looking for work. They can't, and the work's not necessarily there due to industrial advancements and stuff like that. And so they spread out. Now the difference is, of course, if we go back to the 19th century and we have the age of discovery. Now I understand people had obviously already discovered New Zealand, like the Māori were here. But the way I look at the age of discovery is people discovering each other, right? Most of the land had been discovered, no doubt. There was people there, but the world discovering each other and becoming more of a global network. That's how I like to frame the age of discovery in my brain, because it does make a lot. Doesn't necessarily make much sense when someone says Christopher Columbus discovered America when there was already people there, right? No, it was like they'd already discovered it. But what Christopher Columbus did is he discovered those people for Europe, right? And so you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah, you get it. You get it. You get it. You know what I'm talking about. And so it's a bit different to that. So in the modern day, we've all discovered each other, right? And cities and countries are already made. They already exist. Like New Zealand already exists. People aren't going to come here and create society or a civilization, except maybe aliens, right? Could potentially do that, because if aliens were to come, it would be a few thousand years behind them in advancement. They could come here, take over, and do the same sort of thing as like what Britain did in New Zealand, because Britain was thousands of years advanced in the form of technology to the Māori in New Zealand, for example. But then we've got, like, it's going to be hard to follow me because I am just spurging out of my brain here. I don't have a script, okay? I don't like scripting. And so now we've got India, like I said, similar economic and cultural conditions in India that were happening in 19th century Britain. And so now those people are coming out and they're coming to already established nations. So it is a bit different. Obviously, it's completely different. I mean, it's similar in principle, but in practice it's a bit different. And so that's why I think. And so then you've got all these people, and like I said, I'm not picking on India. This is the entire world, okay? But I'm just focusing on India because they have a large population there, and they're very similar, like I said, to 19th century Britain right now. And so now these people are all coming out, and they're coming to places like New Zealand and America and Canada and Australia and stuff like that. And so no hate on them either, because like if I lived in India, I'd want to move to New Zealand as well. I mean, New Zealand is one of the greatest countries in the world. And so that's why I think. And so if we go back to the 19th century, like I imagine after 1840, a lot of Māori obviously would have been happy with some Pākehā coming here and sharing their technology and teachings and stuff like that, and working together with the British. I mean, and the Māori were very quick to pick up on new technology and stuff. I mean, I think I was reading by 1850, so 10 years after the signing, like Māori farms were out exporting Pākehā farmers and wheat to Britain. Now, Māori didn't even have wheat, right, until Britain turned up. And so within 10 years, they were already out competing them. And that was probably due to their collective tribal structure. And they had a lot more access to labor, whereas the Pākehā didn't. They had to pay for the labor. Whereas Māori didn't have to so much, because it was like a family tribal type thing, and everyone just worked together just to sell the wheat. And so that's actually why Pākehā went to sheep farming, because you needed less people. But the problem was you needed more land. And so that's where a lot of the issues came about. So there was a lot of but anyway, I'm losing track of my thought here. And so while Māori would have seen the original influx of British as positive, as those numbers became more and more and more and more, and the Māori vote became less powerful due to them becoming more of a minority in the country, that's where they would have been quite uncomfortable. I think demographic discomfort is an understatement for Māori in the 19th century, but I think it encompasses it well. They would have felt great discomfort. Now, if you look at 21st century Western nations, right? So we've got all these immigrants coming into our nations, and they're coming in quite large numbers quite quickly. Like, for example, when I was like 20 or something, 2001, I think it was, Helen Clark came in. I voted for Helen Clark in the Labour government back in 2001. I'm not going to vote for, I don't know who I vote for these days, but I was young, and so I voted for Helen Clark. I liked Helen Clark. And so in 2001, Helen Clark came in, I think, and there was 3.9 million people in New Zealand, right? But now in 2026, it's like almost 6 million. So that's a big influx. That's a big demographic change, right? And then on top of that, we've also had a lot of New Zealanders emigrate themselves to other countries, mostly Australia and stuff like that, for their own economic opportunities. So I definitely don't begrudge people moving countries for economic benefit, but I think the people in the countries left behind, I don't think it's unfair to say that people in New Zealand may feel some demographic discomfort with the amount of immigration coming in. Now, that's not I'm not hating on immigrants here, okay? So I know people are going to want to be offended at this, but I'm not trying to be offensive. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to explain what I understand is why people are immigrating in such large numbers today, and why people native to these countries, like in New Zealand, may be uncomfortable about it. Because a lot of what I see is with when people do complain about immigration and stuff, they're just written off, dismissed as being racist. I don't think you can in this case. I think it's fair to say that if you are going to bring a lot of people into a country, the native people from elsewhere, the native people, or the people originally there, may feel a bit uncomfortable about it. Now, that's the main issue I have, is like, we live in a democracy, but we've never been asked. That's my problem with immigration. It's not that people are wanting to come here for a better life or whatever. Have at it. I mean, whatever. But my problem is, we were never asked. And I think if you were to ask the general population and say, let's say the Anglosphere, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, Britain, most of them would say, let's just bring it down a little. I don't think we need this much, okay? I think people are quite happy with immigration, but they don't want huge amounts of immigration, because there are economic negatives. There are economic negatives that come from it. It's like, if you bring a lot more people in, that'll increase demand on assets, on everything, on services and assets, and it also increases the supply of labor, which suppresses wages. And they know this. I mean, we go back to COVID, right? So in COVID, they completely cut immigration, obviously. There was like, no one was allowed in. Even New Zealanders weren't allowed in. It was weird. But then what happened was, there's something amazing. With the lack of immigration into New Zealand, house prices started coming down and wages started going up. And once that happened, that was when the real alarm bells started ringing. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, COVID's over, guys. COVID's over. We don't need to worry about COVID anymore. We're going to just let heaps of people in. And I think the immigration in those first year or two after COVID ended was quite high here in New Zealand for New Zealand standards. But what that did was you instantly saw the house prices stop falling and the wages stopped going up. You know, that's what it does. That's literally what it's for. It's literally there to keep asset prices high, keep demand on asset prices, and lower wages. This is where we're at with our economic system. I think we're in the dying throes of our economic system, because the economic system depends on growth, constant growth. And if you're relying on constant growth, you need people to have babies. But if they're not having babies because they're too busy working, then you need to bring in more people. But the problem is, like, another problem that they have is that what they find is in a lot of these countries, once the immigrant communities come in, they have a short influx. There's a short boost of the population, but then those immigrant communities tend to end up breeding about the same as the native population. So I don't think immigration is really the solve. I think it's a short-term fix. I think what we really need to do is figure out why people aren't having babies. And I think there's like a natural, personally, I think there's like a natural cycle of civilization, like the seasons. I think at the moment we're in a bit of a winter. A civilizational winter, and the population is going down. But I think that's just a natural thing. And then once it hits a certain point, we'll hit spring, and then people will start having babies, and then we'll hit summer, and it'll be like a golden period. But I think what we're doing is we're suppressing our civilizational progress by just bringing in people to keep profits moving, basically, because we need constant growth. Because that's another problem I have with this model. No one's happy. No one's never just, oh, we made enough. It's always like, we need more. Like, if you've got a company that made $3 billion profit, but then straight away, they're like, we need to make more than that next year. It's like, why? You've made $3 billion. Why are you stressing about it? Like, and what that ends up doing is you end up like, and we've all seen it, like, a company will make huge profits, but then they'll need a growth next year. So they'll take a feature that you currently got for free, and they might put it behind a paywall, or they'll have a second subscription tier, or shrinkflation. It's a race to the bottom. I think this constant growth is a race to the bottom because no one's having kids anywhere in the world. So to have this constant growth, we need more babies, we need more people, and so. But we've only enough room on the planet for a certain amount of people. So we are going to have to get out of this growth mindset at some point, and get to a more stabilized economic system. Because this constant growth, although it's great, and it does drag the poverty up, like, so if the wealth goes up, growth's going up here, it does drag people up slowly down here. But ultimately, it's not gonna. We can't have constant growth. But I think AI and stuff might. But anyway, I've sort of gone off topic here. So what was my point exactly? So yeah, I don't think you can dismiss people who are unhappy about immigration as purely racist. I think there is there's a justified fear of people that of change. People don't really like change, and if you're just bringing in lots of people that are changing their country culturally or demographically, and you haven't asked them, why wouldn't they get upset? I'll give you a good example. I think this is a good example. A few years ago, I went to the Cook Islands for a holiday. If you haven't been, go. It's amazing. It's an amazing place to go for a holiday. Couple of little islands. It's great. It's actually the last stop on the way before that the Māori had before they came down to New Zealand. So we have Cook Island Māori is what they are over there, and they speak a language that's very similar to Te Reo Māori in New Zealand, and it's like they're it's like where they came from. It's a lovely place. They all speak English, and most of them speak English, and they use the New Zealand dollar and stuff. Like, if you want to go for a holiday somewhere, the Cook Islands is amazing. It's amazing. Amazing bunch of little islands. But here's the thing, like, there's about 15,000 people there, and when I was there, like, other than tourists, about 95% of the people there were Cook Islanders. There was a few smattering of immigrants and stuff in that, but by and large, it was 95% Cook Islanders. Now, you could bring in immigrants in there and create wealth or somehow, but would it make the Cook Islands better? Like, if I went back, let's say 15,000 Pākehā New Zealanders moved there, and Cook Island Māori became 50% of the population in the Cook Islands, and the other 50% being people like me, Pākehā immigrants into the Cook Islands. Would that make the Cook Islands better? I don't know, maybe. Economically, they might be better off or whatever, and if the people of the Cook Islands wanted that and are happy with that, fine. But if they didn't ask for it, and the government just decided to bring in these people, Pākehā, then the Cook Islanders would probably be upset with it. That's basically all I'm saying. I think this is my opinion on immigration, ultimately. Immigration is like water. If you don't have enough of it, you dehydrate, you wither, you die. But if you have too much of it, you drown. So I think there's room for immigration. I think governments need to ask their people more and have more of a dialogue with the people of the country on the sort of levels of immigration they like. And even if the politicians think, well, I want to make more money and I want to increase GDP, or all our corporate overlords are asking for more workers, rah. So you have to ask the people of the country. If the people of the country, as a majority, are like, no, we want to cap it, say, 40,000 people net a year, then you have to live with that. And we have to adjust. Because that's another thing. I think mass immigration actually destroys what New Zealand's strength was at its beginning. Because at the beginning, New Zealand was just a set of islands at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, miles away from anywhere. Like even today, it's like a 3-4 hour flight just to get to Australia, and that's our closest neighbour. So we're in the middle of bloody nowhere. Like we're miles away from Europe and Asia and Africa and the Middle East and Americas. We're in the middle of nowhere, right? And we had a very small population at the beginning. Like I said, in the year 2000, we're like less than 4 million people. But that was our strength, because necessity breeds invention. So because New Zealand was so far away and removed from the rest of the world, we had to invent a lot of stuff and come up with a lot of solutions that actually made New Zealand really competitive on the world stage, right? Like the amount of things that New Zealand invented was crazy. Like instant coffee, we invented instant coffee. Just off the top of my head, like the disposable syringe, like the Kiwi got the tranquilizer dart, like you see in the movies. The Kiwi invented that. The portable electric fence, the Kiwi invented that. So there's lots of different things, A New Zealander was the first to split the atom. A New Zealander was first to climb Mount Everest. New Zealand was the first to have universal suffrage. And that was all came, I think, from our isolation. And obviously the two cultures that were here, Māori and Pākehā. But most of that came from our ability to innovate due to our geographical distance from the rest of the world, and the need to do that. We had to come up with solutions for our problems. And nowadays what we're doing is, if we have a problem, we just import people. I mean, that seems rather short-sighted. And But anyway, I think I've ranted enough at the moment. Basically, this wasn't a very refined video. I apologize. And I didn't want, and there's no hate on immigrants or Indians in particular. I have friends who are Indians. Every morning, my Indian friend sends me a good morning message. It's lovely. I have no problems with the Indian people. This was really just a discussion about migration. It was about how people who are against the level of immigration currently we can't just dismiss them as racist, because they have a genuine point, I think. And, mass immigration in 21st century isn't the same as colonialism in the 19th century, but the outcomes and the feelings that it generates can be similar to the native populations. If the fear of loss of identity, loss of culture, loss of political power and demographic majority, and those are justified fears. And a lot of people especially will look at me as a Pākehā New Zealander. Well, your ancestors did the same thing. You deserve it. Well, two wrongs don't make a right. If it was bad then it's bad now. Like if you hate colonialism and how Europeans immigrated en masse to other countries and then took over, then you should be against mass immigration, because that's ultimately what will happen if it continues at the rate it's happening. You know, it may not be the same exactly, but the outcome could potentially be the same. And so if you think it was bad then, why would we do it again, is basically my point. So yeah, no hate on my Indian friends. You're all right. I don't blame you for wanting to get out of India and come to beautiful New Zealand. You know, it's a great country. I would do the same. And you know, I would just ask the politicians, hey, you need to ask the people. You need to ask the people, because that's the main issue. Is like we just weren't asked. We just weren't asked. They just take it upon themselves and say, hey, we're just gonna let whoever we like in. I think just having and we can't even have an adult conversation about it, because people will just call you racist or whatever. And I don't think, and that just makes it worse. Like if you're just gonna shout people down and call them a racist, then those people will be like, okay, I am a racist. Because what other option do they have? So yeah. The problem isn't actually Indians, it's government. It's the government. It's always the government and money. It's always government and money are the problems, not the people. Not the people. Anyway. Yeah. Like I said, I really didn't want to offend anyone with this. I just wanted to give my opinion on some similarities, what I thought were some similarities. If you let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe, all that jazz. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.